What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my channel. This is Leo's Nerd Talk, and today we're going to be going over my top 10 movies of 2024. Hi, my name is Leo, and if you guys like talking about movie, TV show, video game leader, or just anything nerdy, you have come to the right place. And like I said, today we're talking about my top 10 movies of 2024. So without further ado, let's get into the ranking. Once again, Happy New Year. We are in 2025 and we had a great year of movies behind us in 2024. Lots of movies that it was very difficult for me to make this list. Once we started getting into that top 20, top 15 mark, it was hard to decipher which movie I wanted to go a little bit higher, what movie I thought was worthy of that top 10. So this list honestly could change from one day to the next, but as of right now, this is how I'm feeling. My top 3 or 4 are probably pretty solid of what I think about them in terms of the overall ranking of 2024. But with that being said, let's get straight into the ranking. But before I do, make sure to let me know your top 10 movies of 2024 in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your guys' list. Let me know what you guys think about my list. Of course, my list is not going to be the same as yours. We all have our different tastes in movies. So again, make sure to share your list. Let's discuss why we love these movies so much. But starting at my number 10, we are going to have Civil War. I was extremely excited for this movie when it first got announced. I think the trailers captured me pretty much right from the start. This is a movie that was one of my most anticipated movies of 2024. And walking into this movie was a little bit different than what I was expecting. I was expecting this movie to be a lot about just the people itself and kind of rebelling against the government and different factions and stuff like that. And they took a little bit of a different approach that I actually kind of appreciated, of trying to show the other side of it. Of course, you have all these people that are divided in America and, going for different factions and going against the government, being with the government, all that stuff. But they took a different approach of trying to focus on people that are not necessarily one side or the other. They're just kind of being photographers of the moment, trying to be a war photographer as kind of the most common term to use for them, as they're in the danger, just trying to take pictures of everything that's going on. And it's something that's, obviously been around for a long time. You can see people back since World War I, World War II, taking pictures of the battlefield to have them for the history books, to have them for, lessons and for learning and, trying to revisit the horrors of war. And for a movie like this, Civil War, that is such a tense movie, especially in like our current climate that we are in our world right now, it made for a very interesting watch. And seeing that side of it, of the photography of someone that isn't necessarily on one side or the other and is just trying to capture what is happening, the horrors of what a civil war could look like, I thought was a great approach for this movie. I thought acting across the board was amazing. The set pieces were incredible. All the war and action sequences were incredible. And overall, the movie, by the end of it, really stuck with me, and I recommended it to a lot of people throughout the year. So Civil War for sure is one of those movies that stick with me for a very long time. I can't wait to see this director's next movie, which is going to be called Warfare, I believe it is. That's hopefully coming out this next year. So this is one of those directors that I'm definitely keep my eye out for them. And I was very, very pleased with Civil War. But going into a lighter mood, coming to my number 9, we have Deadpool and Wolverine. This is pretty much everything that I would have wanted from a Deadpool movie. You had one of the greatest, I should say, of Deadpool and Wolverine being that dynamic duo. Such hilarious moments, such great action sequences, great emotion. They had the whole spectrum of emotions in this movie, on top of having some great action sequences, having amazing cameos that blew my mind in the theater. This is one of those movies that, for me, is going to be one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. Bringing back Hugh Jackman as the Wolverine was one of the best things that we could see. Obviously after Logan, people were worried of his kind of legacy being tainted. And to a certain extent, you can say that maybe it was. Some people probably took the egregiousness of what Deadpool did with Wolverine's body in the beginning kind of a little too far. But I can see that point, and by the other side, I just love seeing Hugh Jackman back as Wolverine. I think he did amazing. He jumped into the role and just tackled that role so well. And Deadpool, obviously Ryan Reynolds, we've said this multiple times, he is the actor for Deadpool. There's not another person that could play Deadpool, in my opinion. As of right now, obviously, people will probably try to do their best, but as of right now, he is the perfect role for Deadpool. So out of the 3 Deadpool movies, for me, this is for sure my favorite. And I think it just ticks all the boxes for me. It's one of the greatest superhero movies of all time, one of the funniest superhero movies of all time. It's one of those movies that I'm gonna always want to rewatch just to relive some of those cameos that pop up, because they were just mind-blowing, and to me they still have that effect. I've seen the movie maybe 3 times since its release, and I still get chills when Blade comes out. So it's one of those movies that is gonna for sure stand the test of time and be a classic. When 20 years down the road, we're gonna still watch this movie and be amazed at how good it was. But coming to my number 8, we're gonna have The Book of Clarence. This was the first movie I saw in 2024, and this one was a strange one. It obviously tackles religion, and I think it tackles it in a very smart way, where it's not trying to offend anybody. There's a lot of things that they kind of took and tried to twist it in their own way that I thought was very interesting. A lot of great topics. It's one of those movies that definitely make you think about your religion, especially if you are religious. And even if you're not, it's still a great movie that's actually very enjoyable. And it's pretty funny, has some good sequences, some good action sequences, great characters that you invest yourself in and care about, an amazing soundtrack. Like, I still listen to the soundtrack to this day. And after leaving that movie, when I reviewed it, I rated it, at the end of doing all that, I was like, this might be my favorite movie of the whole year. I was that confident that this movie was going to do so good that it was still going to be in my top 10, which it ended up being. I've been wanting to rewatch the movie, but I want to watch the movie again when I have time. I don't want to throw it on and kind of leave it there, and as I'm doing other stuff, I want to be able to focus on it, because it's one of those movies that definitely gets you thinking, has great characters, a great story, and by the end of it, for me, was very memorable. So if you haven't seen The Book of Clarence, because I think this is definitely one of those movies of 2024 that was completely slept on, I would absolutely recommend it. Go check it out. It was such a great watch. But coming at my number 7, we have Abigail. Like I said, in my worst movies of all time, when it came to Salem's Lot, in the past couple of years, we've definitely had a resurgence of great vampire movies, and this one is definitely one of them. This was such a fun movie. You had such a great cast of characters that fed off each other's charisma, and just the dynamic between everyone was amazing. And then you have the little girl who plays Abigail the vampire, was such a fun twist of her kind of being this little sadistic girl that is kind of playing with her food, this little ballerina vampire. That was just such a fun time. The movie was extremely gory. You know, there's just a lot to this movie that makes it one of the best horror vampire movies of all time. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved every second of it. I felt like this movie surprised me. I never got to see it when it first came out in theaters, because I was supposed to go in a big group. That never ended up happening, and I watched it later down the line in the year. And I really wished I saw this movie in theaters, because I felt like it would have been such a great theater viewing experience. But even just watching it at home was just so much fun. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought everybody did an amazing job. The directing was amazing. The story that they were trying to tell was so fun. It was just one of those like classic horror vampire movies that you can throw on and just have such a great time with it. And it's one of those like feel good vampire movies, even though there's like death and gore and blood and stuff. It's just such a great one that is, again, gonna stand the test of time and be held as one of the best vampire movies we've gotten in the last decade, and one of the best vampire movies we've ever gotten before as well. So for me, Abigail comes in at my number 7. But coming in at my number 6, we're gonna have Alien Romulus. This was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. The original trailer captured me so well. I felt like it was so intense. I love the look of it. They were trying to go for that mixture of Alien and Aliens, and that's basically what the movie ended up being. They took the best parts of Alien, the original, they took the best parts of Aliens, the sequel, and they mashed it together, making, I think, a perfect combo. Now, is it better than those two movies? Technically, no. But I do think I can have more fun with this movie than the original Aliens. I wouldn't necessarily say I can have more fun with this movie than the sequel Aliens, but it's up there. This is one of the best Alien movies that we have gotten in a very, very long time. We have characters that we instantly care about, and then you have your synthetic Andy, which traditionally in Alien, you either have Bishop, who you're rooting for because he turns out to be one of the greatest synthetics that this franchise ever had. And then you have the original one from Aliens, who was obviously like an evil robot, an evil synthetic. And then you have Andy, that's such a different role where he's kind of more of a kid. It's kind of a role that you have to kind of protect him. And he ends up being one of the best characters in this movie. After he gets the little switch up where he becomes more serious, the way he switches between being kind of the more helpless role and being the strong role at the same time is such a great dynamic between him and also our main character. I thought she did fantastic as kind of our Ripley replacement. And overall, the Alien itself, all that stuff, the horror of Alien was done so well in this movie. Fede Alvarez is one of those directors that I absolutely love. He has directed my favorite horror movie of all time within The Evil Dead. So this just had a recipe for me to love this movie, and it was just such a great viewing experience. It was so amazing. The practical effects were so great. The gore, the horror was so great, and overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. One of the best movies in the Alien franchise. But coming in my number 5, we have Terrifier 3. Terrifier has been one of those franchises that has slowly just gotten better and better and better. And Terrifier 3 was just another addition that was just so amazing. I love the story of it. I love where Damien Leone is taking this character, the lore that we're going to, the secrets of Terrifier and this whole demonic presence stuff that's going on. Of course, we have our main character who is just such a badass, one of the best final girls of all time, and her lore and her backstory that we're starting to slowly peel back these layers. And I just love where Damien Leone is taking these characters, and I can't wait to see where we're gonna go next when Terrifier 4 eventually comes out. And this movie, beyond all the gore and guts that are just amazing practical effects, the story, like I mentioned, is honestly very captivating. You know, a lot of people's complaints of the original Terrifier is that there's no story, it's all gore, no substance. The second one proved everybody wrong because the story was amazing in that one, and this third one is just diving deeper into that lore. So you have all this amazing gore, practical effects that is going on, while you have such a captivating story, characters that you completely invest yourself in, characters that you love both on the bad and the good side, and it just makes for such a great horror franchise. And I'm rooting for Damien Leone to make this to one of the best horror franchises of all time. Terrifier 3 was amazing, especially in the Christmas season. So this is definitely one of those movies that I'm gonna watch mostly every year during the Christmas season. You know, I love my little family heartwarming movies during the Christmas season, but every once in a while I love a little horror movie, and this is probably going to be in that yearly rotation. So for me, Terrifier 3 obviously wasn't surprising that it was going to be great, but it still blew my mind of how great it was. Absolutely loved it. It's made it to my top 50 horror movies of all time, and I just can't wait to see where this franchise goes next. But coming to my number 4, we have Late Night with the Devil. I have a lot of horror movies in this top 10 list, but this one was amazing for me because I felt like it was just so different, so unique. You have a late night talk show host who brings some people on, and some demonic stuff starts happening, and you just go through this very like stylized version of a late night show from back in the day. And I just love the way these sequences start happening where you feel like you're watching a show live, and then it cuts back and forth between going into the kind of the backstage stuff, and you know the visuals change where it's a lot more crisp, more 4K, wider view, and then you get cut back to kind of having that more smaller aspect ratio to make it feel like an old school TV. And acting wise, performance wise, the practical effects that were going on throughout this entire film, I thought just did such a great job. It was one of those movies that genuinely put some fear in me. It's very hard for a horror movie nowadays to actually genuinely scare me or creep me out. And I felt like this one actually did a pretty good job in certain sequences to actually make me feel a little bit of that fear. And I just champion it just for that alone, that you are able to do something so unique, so great, have great character work, and have great horror moments that actually inflict some sort of fear in me, at least, because not many things scare me anymore. And this movie actually made me feel a little nervous watching it. And it was pretty awesome to have that in a horror movie, especially nowadays where everything feels generic. This was just so unique. This movie also made it into my top 50 horror movies of all time. And I just really, really enjoyed what they did with this movie, even to the end where things started to get a little wonky and you started seeing some of like the cult stuff that's going on behind the scenes. That could have thrown some people off, but for me, for some reason, it totally worked for me. I love the imagery. I love the directing, what they were able to do. So Late Night of the Devil, if you haven't seen it yet, I highly, highly recommend it. Definitely one of the best horror movies of this year, of course, as you can see. And if you're a big fan of horror, and especially of indie horror, this is definitely one to check out. But before I give you my top 3, make sure to share your list in the comment section down below. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying what you're seeing here. But with that being said, let's go into my number 3. And coming to my number 3, we have Dune Part 2. This is probably no surprise. Everybody probably is putting this in their top 10. This movie was amazing. After seeing the first one, I enjoyed the first one quite a bit. That movie for sure is a lot more of world building and building characters and building out the lore. It's a little bit more of a tougher watch because it is a lot slower. But after viewing everything that you see in part 1 and translating that into part 2 and seeing how Paul Atreides grows up and is, fulfilling this prophecy that they're trying to put out there, it has some of the greatest epic moments of all time. You have the amazing Paul Atreides speech. You have him riding the sandworm for the first time, which is one of the greatest moments ever in cinema. That moment gave me chills. It was just so amazing to see that on screen. I saw it twice, and both times, such an amazing viewing experience. I absolutely love this franchise. I can't wait to see what they're gonna do next and how they're going to continue on this story. Obviously, the story has a lot of lore to it and can go on for quite a bit. But just speaking on this movie alone, performance-wise was amazing. Visual-wise, probably the best visuals of the year. Story-wise, one of the greatest stories and world buildings that we've seen in a long time. Directing was beautiful. Imagery was beautiful. It was one of those movies that is Oscar-worthy. And I hope they get at least some sort of award for this, because this movie was honestly amazing, super epic. I can't wait to see what Dune kind of goes on in the future. But again, if you've been kind of hesitant about this franchise, definitely go in there, do a 1-2 punch, take the 6 hours of your day that it takes to watch these two back to back, and I promise you will not be disappointed. But coming to my number 2, we have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. The previous Planet of the Apes trilogy is one of the best trilogies in cinema history. Such amazing movies following Caesar the ape. What an amazing, incredible story. And for them to follow up with that, I think it was 300 years later in the future after the fall of Caesar. This story honestly was incredible. I was very surprised to watch this movie and like this movie better than at least one of the movies of the previous trilogy. But I think it just fits so well. The story just fits so well. The visuals, the motion cap of the apes are just still so amazing. You had a villain in here that was extremely epic, super awesome to watch him on screen as well. And just the story that they're trying to tell. And once you get to those close to those end credits and you're seeing what's going on of these humans that are pretending to be kind of more primal, but they're actually really trying to communicate with other humans and trying to build back the world and retake the world. I think that story is something that can go on for a long time and build this franchise out even more. But just speaking on this movie alone, I think it had a great story. The world building of this more post-apocalyptic world of the apes fully taking over the world has some of the greatest visuals and world building and storytelling and characters, people that you invest yourself in. So this was definitely such a great movie. It was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I think it was my top 3 of the entire year. And it didn't disappoint. I'm so glad it didn't disappoint. And again, one of those other movies I can't wait to see where they're going to take the franchise, because the Planet of the Apes franchise is one of my favorites. I haven't seen too many of the original ones. I do want to rewatch it because I know a lot of people love those as well. So it's just one of those great franchises that a lot of people love. It's one of those classics. And this movie, like the previous trilogy, like the originals, is going to be added to the classics of being some of the greatest Planet of the Apes movies of all time. But coming at my number one is going to be The Substance. This was the most surprising movie I've probably seen the entire year. This is automatically, as soon as I finished watching this movie, I couldn't wait to tell people about it. I recommended it to so many people. Every person that I had a chance to that loves movies, that is willing to go to the movie theaters, willing to sit down at home and watch a 2-3 hour long movie, I told them you have to watch this movie because this is one of the craziest, most epic, greatest story told, because you have such a unique concept of this substance of making a better version of yourself, and just the way they framed it where you're yourself, but you can take parts of your life from each other if you try to abuse this substance, and just the practical effects of this gore that we see throughout the entire movie. And also just the imagery, the directing, the style of this film was so amazing. The message that they were trying to achieve with all the visuals and the storytelling just hit perfectly. I think they did a slam dunk in trying to figure out how to tell this message without hammering a certain thing down your throat. It was perfectly delivered. Again, visuals were amazing, performances was amazing, the soundtrack was amazing, the score was great, directing, everything about this movie. If I didn't give this a 5 out of 5, but I would give it a 5 out of 5. I always like to try to find any sort of little negative, but this movie is damn near perfect in my opinion. I think when I did my top 50 horror movies of all time back in October, this made it into my top 5 horror movies of all time. That's just how much I love this movie. I've already seen it a few times, and every time I still have such a great time with this film. It's, like, if you haven't seen it, stop whatever you're doing right now. Go watch The Substance, because it is one of the craziest movies you'll ever see. It's very gory. It's very, very gory. So that is something you can't really stomach too much. Be warned, but I still think you should experience it, because it's one of those movies that is just so amazing. When things start going crazy, it just gets crazier. And by the end of it, like, it sticks with you so much that you're going to be thinking about it for days on end. And you're going to want to rewatch it just because how crazy this movie gets, and just how it just lines up and goes full circle and has such a perfect ending. It's just such a great film. And it just, when I was making this list, I was trying to think to myself, damn, what is my number one? What is my number one? And once I got to The Substance, no questions about it. I was like, oh yeah, that for sure is my number one movie of the year. I just had such an amazing time with this film. And like I said, if you haven't seen it, just watch it. I promise you, out of every movie that I've ever recommended, this is one of the ones that you will 100% not be disappointed. But that's going to be it for this one, guys. Again, let me know your top 10 movies of 2024 in the comment section down below. And again, if you guys like Time Think movie, TV shows, or video game related, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. I'll see you guys on the next video. Thank you.